the National Football League's NFC South Conference got that much more difficult when Tom Brady decided to make his residence there professionally. And the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons joining us right now on the Rich Eisen Show. Great to say hello to the gentleman referred to in the league and certainly in his locker room as DQ, Dan Quinn, here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Dan?
Hey, Rich. I'm doing good, man. It's always good to be on with you, and as we're getting started. So, yeah, man, everything's good here in Atlanta.
Excellent. Glad to hear that. Everything good with your family? Everything all good?
Yep, everything's good with us and with the team. And so in this new space, there's been a lot of good connections, a lot of one-on-one meetings, lots of customized, learning and programs for the fellows. So there's definitely some ways to gain advantages even in a unusual time.
Excellent. So I want to put a pin in that for the moment and return to it. I want to get into the history of you in the NFL. Is it true that if it wasn't for a phone call from Steve Mariucci to your house and asked for you to put your wife on the phone to talk to her to make sure that everyone was on board for him to hire you, that potentially you weren't talking to me as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons right now? Would that be a potentially accurate statement, Dan?
I would say it's definitely not accurate, but it is 100% accurate that Mooch did that. And I would say, is that one of the coolest and classiest moves of all time?
So what did he do again, Dan? Because I don't want to say that he takes full credit for you and your success, but it's close to full. It's close to full, Dan.
It 100% should be. And
okay.
Part of the cool thing, so Rich, I interviewed with Mooch and the staff there, and I remember getting on the plane and flying back to New York, is where I was living at the time. And we'll call you tomorrow. And so, like most things, tomorrow comes and, goes through the day. And at the time, I was working at Hofstra, and I was the strength coach as well. So I can remember somebody, standing by the phone and by my desk and say, man, if this dude calls me, you come down to the weight room and grab me. And so, 4 o'clock comes, 5 o'clock, go home at 7. And so that night, I'm thinking, didn't happen, And so about, 10 o'clock at night, the phone rings, and it was Mooch. And he said, hey, I want to, offer you the job. And he said, oh, by the way, is your wife there? I looked over to Stacy, and I said, kind of covered up the phone like you could do before cell phone stuff. I said, he wants to talk to you. And her eyes got big, as you can imagine. Like, what? And I was like, I don't, give the shoulder shrug, and I just hand him the phone. And then he says, hey, we're offering this job to Dan, and we just want to welcome you to it, too. And so, from that moment on, there's a lot of people in the NFL. But if you want to talk about, the number of people Stacy would fight somebody for, Mooch is part of that group because he made our transition from college into the NFL as smooth as it could be. And so it was the ideal spot to learn and watch him. And so for 2 years, every meeting, every one, just I have notebooks of Steve Mariucci meetings and conversations just because it was the ideal person of what it could look like for me as a young coach first coming into the NFL. And so it was honestly the best runway you could have, Rich, for an NFL coaching career, to learn from him. And so, yeah, he definitely had a big influence. And I would say in our house, if there's one coach, I would hope I'm first. Some days I am, some days not, but definitely second from a coaching side, and it would be Mooch.
So if we're wondering where Wayne Crabett got his strength from at Hofstra, is that you, Dan? Is that what you're saying? Did you get him all yoked?
At that time, there was a good connection, brother. Dave Fiore played out at the Niners for a while.
Sure.
Lance Schulters, who was a safety, and so don't think that I didn't call all of them. Hey man, would you mind giving Mooch a call? Anything, trying like hell to find one sliver of a connection to them. And it was at one time that you got the opportunity to do an interview, and I thought it went well, but then, of course, the next day I was like, no, man, I missed it. And so he called that night about 10 o'clock, and it was definitely a phone call. For me, that was my draft day story, my, kind of not my rookie draft call, but it was, for me, if somebody didn't play in the NFL, that was just as good to me.
I love Mooch, too. So does my wife. So does everybody that works with him at NFL Network or has ever come across him. I mean, I guess everyone not named Terrell Owens. But other than that, I mean, that's just
Wow.
that's for another show with Mooch. But he's just a great person, man, and I'm glad to hear that. And it's amazing. Again, you've been around him, and obviously Pete Carroll, so you've been around guys who are pretty high energy, high energy for sure. And I imagine that's kind of needed right now too, right? I mean, even though you're not physically there with these guys, you kind of need to bring that to the equation.
You better have that, and there's definitely ways that has to come across, especially when, Rich, you're meeting, these 25 rookies for the first time.
Right.
And so trying to build a relationship with them and get connected with them. And it's like, okay, to get to know you, what do I really need to know? Like, I know your stats. I can look you up on Google. The scouts have been to the school, but having those one-on-one conversations, that's the thing to me that makes the difference. And so, fortunately, we've had those one-on-ones where it's a chance just to visit away from football, off the field. What are the things that light you up and your family background, and then we can kind of start building that on the football side. But it was that's one thing I would say moving forward every year. I didn't always do that, to have a one-on-one, FaceTime call with every player prior to our rookie mini camp. But I will from now on, because having that uninterrupted time, entering into a team and a culture and what's expected of you, it was, something that I definitely going to use for, moving forward.
So what are you being told right now, Coach Dan Quinn of the Falcons, where about when you think there could be a protocol for a mini camp or a training camp or anything of that nature? Where does that currently stand for you?
Yeah, and that's the hardest part for everybody, because they're wanting to look down the road, and they're saying, all right, man, how do you just throw like a kick-ass week? And so I try to give the guys guidelines just as soon as they're concrete. Once they become more concrete, then I can, sell them to them. I don't want to throw out some stuff to them and then, say, hey, this has to change. I kind of went the other approach, Rich, to say, I know right now outside there's a lot of things of what we can't do and what we don't know, but here's what I do know and what we can do. And so that's meant their workout. Some of the guys are working out together, here in Georgia where they're allowed to do it. They're not allowed to do it at the facility. Some people are in their homes all over, like, whether they're in California, a guy like Alex Mack who's there and doing training on his own, and then they, have, connections online with the guy. So it's really a customized off-season program at the moment. We've had meetings where they're one-on-one, then the next space is one-on-some, and then I'm sure, you've been on some calls too where, like, we do a Zoom meeting where it's, 50 people or, those have to be quick, man. It's kind of like reporting the news and sharing it. It's hard to have, especially for a guy like you could probably appreciate this, who likes humor, when the microphones are off and you don't have body language, some of the humor part that you like to have fun at the team meetings, you don't get to incorporate that as much as you do when you're one-on-one. So a lot to learn. But as far as down the line, I've just tried to stay, hey, man, this is the intent for the week. We have like a team meeting on a Monday, and let's throw a kick-ass week, up for the next 4 days, and then I'll reconnect with you over the weekend, and we'll set it again for Monday.
So I guess you don't have the into Will Ferrell that Coach Carroll has. Look, we can find some comedians who love the Atlanta Falcons to burst in.
Yeah, we
here.
do, and ours is Keenan Thompson. So yeah, Keenan's been on with us.
Okay.
And,
yeah.
We even talked about, for us, like, he did Saturday Night Live from home, and I said, what's it like without the audience laughter?
Right.
And they said, like, Dan, that is the thing, where it's like you don't hear everybody and see them, and so. Like, for those of us who love, like, the interaction with the team and the players, that part you don't get to do. So you just try to find other ways to do it, like staff meetings where you get to see everybody. That's better than a conference call. So you just try to find little wins, man, and where you're going. But, yeah, Will Ferrell is as funny as you can. And I've been in meetings before where he's come in, during my time in Seattle. And I can remember, like, one time literally I had, like, tears, out of my eyes. He's like, and it was like ad-libbed so quickly. The dude is super talented, man. It was in New Orleans in like 2010, and I can remember like it was yesterday.
Yeah,
funny as hell.
Yeah, Keenan Thompson though, he's been in more Saturday Night Live sketches than anybody else. So I mean, you can go toe to toe. You've got.
We're not backing down. Now. We might have those guys go head to head.
You're not
maybe
backing down.
Will has to come out for our opener against Seattle. Keenan will be here. Everybody has to battle. So Pete and I, Will, Keenan, team. just bring it.
I like it. Dan Quinn, a few more minutes left with the Atlanta Falcons head coach here on the Rich Eisen Show. And another tough aspect of not being able to have players there is who, what do you have in a player like Todd Gurley? And your offensive coordinator, Dirk Cutter, today on a Zoom conference call with reporters said that no one seems to know what is his health status and his workload, et cetera, so on and so forth. What can you tell us about Todd Gurley's readiness and his health status, Coach?
I think, we have a number of new players, that we've added. And so for all of those guys, we'll get to know them better, when they get here and they're around. So on the offensive side, it's Todd and Hayden Hurst, we haven't got to, be around Hayden and, what's the practice like, and same thing with Todd, what's going to be the best battle rhythm for him during the week on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to get him at his best. He's going to be such a big part of our offense. I'm sure that's what Dirk's referring to, to how much is the right amount for him. And that's our job as coaches to, once the guys get here, is to help them understand and learn that the best we can. And that's good communication that'll go on between, Todd, myself, the same thing. We do that with Julio too. And so what's the right amount of workload, for him during the week, knowing that, on game day, we want to get the best version of him. And so that's what we want to do with Todd. That's what we want to do with Hayden, Dante Fowler, anybody that's new to the program, getting to know the guys and understand them the best and how to feature them best. So, when Todd gets here, like we've already had those, conversations, obviously, but we'll make sure that we get the best, version of him, and what does the practice week look like to make sure on Sundays we get to feature him in all the best stuff that he does. So we're pumped to get to have him here.
But I'm assuming when you and Thomas Dimitroff and the rest of the Falcons brass gets together to make a decision on signing somebody like Todd Gurley, was it just a conversation of like, we've known what he can do, we see what he can do, obviously he's a guy who's here, but there's a risk. I mean, it was kind of sight unseen in that regard, right?
I guess the good news, though, Rich, on that one is Todd did finish the season. And so I think it's, in some spaces, it's probably even more difficult for a player that, finished on IR or had to do, a surgery or a procedure in the off season. So that definitely helped where, we knew Todd was able to finish the season there. And so that's a big piece of it, knowing that he came through the season, healthy and didn't have to have any, surgery in the off season. So once that, happened, then we knew, okay, hey, we got a chance to see where he's at and how we can feature him in the offense. But I think, what is the right amount? That'll have to be, in training camp and in the season. So we find our battle rhythm with him of what his best looks like for the whole year. And so we're looking forward to doing that.
All right. Well, you're the first coach in the NFC South I've spoken to on this show since Tom Brady has signed, other than Arians. Will you be the first to say, bring it? Will you be the first to say, give me that exclusive as an NFC South coach telling Tom Brady, let's go?
Yeah, I think.
Yes.
What you see, I think you wanted it. What I think you're going to see this year is there's going to be some kick-ass quarterback play, and that includes coming from number 2 right here from our team. So,
yes,
for the teams that are playing in this conference, certainly those guys, stand amongst a good group, even taller. So. We've got some good quarterbacks, even in our first part of our schedule, Rich. I think in our first 4 games, like Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, and Aaron Rodgers in the first, 3 of the first 4 games. And so at the end of our, in the NFC, like you said, with in our division, in the second half of the season with Breeze and Brady alone and Mahomes, it's definitely a good quarterback driven schedule. And one that we'll know right exactly where we're at, man. So we're ready to get rocking.
Fantastic. Look forward to that. As you know, number 2, Matt Ryan. Many people refer to him as Matty Ice. I've been trying to get him for years to accept the nickname of the Matchural. What will it take for you to just drop that into a Zoom? Refer to him as the Matchural.
Wait, what?
Yes, I'm actually
going to the head coach.
Yeah, I'm going to the head coach. I'm using this last moments of real estate with Dan Quinn. What will it take for you to refer to him once as the Matchural, just in passing? What do you think?
It would take a lot, Rich.
Rich, you got to move on. You got to move on.
Come on. I mean, just one time, just really casual. The Matchural, you have the floor. Whatever you got to do.
No, I think he's way too gritty and tough. You see the external, nice, smooth, Matt Ryan is a straight wolf in sheep's clothing. Like, he is a rare competitor. He's tough as hell. So, yeah, that's one thing I wouldn't, go with him. Like, this dude puts it in for it. So it would almost be an insult to him that it comes so naturally. Like, he is 100% driven, grinder, tough ass. So that's why it wouldn't come natural for me to call him that.
Rich, you got to move on. You got to move on.
That's what he told me the last time.
We'll fight for other stuff,
I was about to say it could come naturally, but, what are you going to do?
Come on, Rich.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to let it go.
All right, Coach.
Rich, you got to move on. You got to move on.
All right, I've loud and clear. Thanks for the time, Coach. You take care of yourself.
All right, you guys have a good one.
Yeah, that's Dan Quinn. Have we gotten to the point where you're going to start faulting a guy for trying? I'm going to keep trying.
I implore you to please stop.
Nope.
Rich, you got to move on. You got to move on.
I am undaunted.